All right, so welcome to our first lecture recap overview. And so what we'll do is, hopefully you've played this game on your own and you were able to sort of do well, but in the cases on questions you missed, this walkthrough will sort of walk you through each of these questions and sort of explain my thinking behind the question and the logic behind the correct answer. So with that, we'll begin. So the first question is asking about the different models of the criminal justice system. If you recall in lecture, we talked about our system sort of, is on these two scales, and we sort of have a balance, and we swing between these two pendulum extremes. On the one side, you have due process model, on the other side, you have the crime control model. And so the model that operates under the presumption of guilt is the same model that would really emphasize efficiency in our system. And that'd be the crime control model. This model would push for really speedy trials, relaxation of the rules of evidence, and really pushing for plea bargaining and anything that's going to speed up the system. And part of that is going to be operating on this presumption of guilt, as opposed to our current system, which operates on the presumption of innocence, where you're innocent until proven guilty. Under the crime control model, if it was purely crime control, it would mean that you are guilty until proven innocent. The due process model, on the other hand, would be the model that really emphasizes individual rights and protection of those individual rights at all costs. The second question is asking you about those different types of arrest. And in this one, it's asking you sort of which type of arrest is where a person feels they're not free to go, but this is regardless of whether the officer themselves consider it to be an arrest. And so within the lecture, we talked about several different varieties of these sort of arrest types. And in this case, the correct answer here is subjectively arrested. My apologies for hitting the wrong button there. The correct answer is subjectively arrested. It's when you feel as though you are not free to go. It doesn't matter what the officer says, you've sort of become subjectively arrested. And that's in contrast to the other options listed here. Behaviorally arrested is really about the sort of the steps that involve an officer's behavior. If they restrain you, if they stop you, if they give you a verbal sort of notification that you're under arrest, that would be sort of behaviorally arrested because they are engaging behaviors that would signal arrest. Officially arrested is when you are officially booked into the system. When you're taken to the police station and sort of the paperwork begins to be filed. Legally arrested is when everything sort of comes together. All right, so moving on to our third question. This really has to do with sort of the progress through our criminal justice system. And so if we get to a point where a defendant is found guilty, the question becomes, well, who decides on a sentence? And so there are several different actors within the courtroom system. You have the jury, the prosecutor, and the judge. In the case of sentencing, that responsibility falls to the judge. The jury is there to determine guilt, but they don't determine the sentence. The prosecutor is there to prosecute the case, to try the case. The prosecutor can make recommendations for sentencing, but ultimately it's up to the judge to make the sentence, and they do so by using the law and how it's been legislated for what a sentence length should be. And then our final question deals with those different meta-influences. And it's asking specifically, the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act, what meta-influence is this associated with? And for the Omnibus Crime Control, this all has to do with the war on crime. This is in contrast to the other meta-influences, such as the Civil Rights Movement, or the Vietnam War, more recently the concern over homeland security. Now it's important to sort of understand examples of each of these different meta-influences so you can apply them to questions on those mastery quizzes. So that wraps up this first week of lecture, which is week 2 in the course, and gives you an idea of some of the key points within this lecture that you'll want to pay attention to as we move towards those mastery quizzes.